If your 2010 through 2024 4Runner could use some extra height and a better feel while driving, this Stage 2 Icon Vehicle Dynamics 0 to 3.5 inch lift suspension system with tubular upper control arms should be on your short list when shopping for a lift kit. This Stage 2 kit is a great choice for the 4Runner owner tackling any overlanding adventures, tougher trails, or even just wants a more advanced kit for your hybrid driving style if you're on the street and want a more responsive system there, in addition to some of those off-road benefits. The coilovers included also are height adjustable if you want to dial in your suspension height, fit a specific tire to your preference, in addition to getting that increased travel and ground clearance that you may be searching for out of a suspension. This kit also includes key components to maintain a comfortable ride quality and allow for proper alignment if you want a one-stop shop when it comes to suspension. As I mentioned, this kit offers 0 to 3.5 inches of lift in the front thanks to the coilovers, and the springs in the rear bump up the back about 2 inches, making for some really good ground clearance underneath the 4Runner, the ability to fit up to a 33-inch tire, and improved travel, especially thanks to these struts and shocks and these upper control arms here. Now, the coilovers and shocks included have a monotube design with an internal reservoir, so bumps, washboards, slow crawling situations, and even low shaft speed highway driving is all handled very well thanks to the digressive valving. Now, the feel starts off a little firmer at low shaft speed for reduced body roll and a tighter feel, which is great for that highway driving or on-road driving. And once that shaft really gets moving, it offers a softer feel for less body chatter and less harshness. Now, the upper control arms here are also a big benefit to this kit with the larger construction and the uniball design. They're going to correct some of that geometry in the front for a better ride and kind of flatten that angle for some better wear resistance, and also help increase the droop travel in the front so you can get some better articulation while you're off-road. Now, kicking off the construction with the shocks and the coilovers, these are both made of 6061 aircraft grade aluminum. They're CNC machine components. Now, the coilover is about 2.5 inches in diameter and the shocks are 2 inches in diameter. Both the sizing and the aluminum make for a huge improvement in the heat dissipation when the shock is being worked really hard, and the monotube gas charge construction helps eliminate cavitation or foaming that forms inside the shock that would normally cause shock fade. Now, the coil on the coilover and the coil in the back are not aluminum, however. They're made of a high tensile steel and they're powder coated to reduce any rust over time. The upper control arms are also steel with a uniball construction for additional strength, and it adds a lot of durability to the front, specifically made for off-road driving, and they have that improved alignment, being a little bit longer than stock, and they're also just beefed up compared to factory, especially with the Delta ball joint. Now, it's a high angle ball joint as well. It's greasable so you can maintain it over time, and it has a tough zinc plated housing. Now, all of this here is completely bolt on. It comes with all of the hardware and every necessity out of the box in order to bolt this up, which we'll show you how to do in just a minute. Now, this kit is around the $3,100 mark, making this a premium option in the category, but for good reason, as you can see. Now, looking at this kit compared to the rest in the category, the highlights really come in the inclusiveness of this kit, making sure to correct and beef up the suspension angles to allow for a worry-free operation with a reliable design, and the fact that you're getting 0 to 3.5 inches of lift as far as the range is concerned, allowing for customization. Now, if you're in search of a full kit that offers a tough build, a lot of capability and options for your 4Runner, this is a solid one to consider. As I said, everything that you need for the install comes out of the box in this kit, and it's a completely bolt-on installation. However, it's a tougher job for sure. So this gets a 3 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter. Should take about a day or so with the right tools and setup, and I highly recommend an alignment after the install for proper performance and proper wear. Now, at this point, I'm going to hand it over to one of our installers who is going to walk you through a detailed breakdown on how this bolts up to the 4Runner. So that is going to wrap it up for what I have to say. Let's go ahead and jump into the install.
Tools required for this install include an impact gun, clip remover tool, needle nose pliers, a hammer, 10, 17, and 19 millimeter wrenches, 14, 17, 19, and 21 millimeter ratcheting wrenches, an extension, 8mm Allen socket, 10, 12, and 14mm sockets, 17 and 19mm swivel sockets, and a pry bar. What's up guys? Today we're installing a lift kit on our 4Runner. First you're going to watch a quick uninstall video showing you how to remove your factory suspension components, and I'll meet you back here for the install. So the first thing we're going to do is disconnect our brake line brackets. The one on the upper control arm is a 10mm bolt, whereas the one in the knuckle is a 12. So I've got my 10mm socket to start on the upper control arm, so let's get that out. So first we'll get our upper control arm bracket. So we'll take that 10mm socket to remove this bolt. Then we can pop our bracket out of the way, throw our bolt back, and then we'll switch to our 12mm socket for the brake line bracket and our knuckle. And then same thing, pop that out of the way, and thread our bolt back in. Next we can remove the 18mm nut holding our sway bar end link in. So we'll grab an 18mm socket to pop that off. Next we can disconnect our tie rod end. So we'll grab a pair of needle nose pliers to bend back our cotter pin. Next we can take our 19mm socket to remove our nut. Next we can grab a hammer to tap on the side of the knuckle here to break our ball joint free. Now once we get this to pop free, we can remove our nut and get our tie rod end off to the side. Next we can loosen up our lower strut mount. So we'll grab a 19mm socket for our nut side and a 19mm wrench for our bolt side to loosen that up. Next we can disconnect our upper control arm ball joint from our knuckle. So grab a pair of needle nose pliers for our cotter pin, and then we can grab our 19mm socket to loosen up our nut. And now with our nut loosened up, we can do the same thing where we're smacking the side of the knuckle. Make sure you leave that nut on so your whole knuckle doesn't go flying once it pops free. And then we'll just pull down on our upper control arm and fully remove our castle nut. Next we can come to the top of our strut tower and remove our 3 nuts. So we'll take a 14mm ratcheting wrench to do so. I'm going to end up leaving this nut on there hand tight until we're ready to remove our strut. Now at this point you can repeat that entire process on the other side because we do need to be able to move our sway bar to get our strut out. Next we can remove our lower strut bolt. And then we can go back up top and remove that nut. And then we can pull our sway bar up and out of the way. And then once you have your strut out on one side, you can do that same thing on the other side. Now that we have our factory strut removed, the last thing we need to do is remove our upper control arm. So I've got my clip remover tool. I'm gonna pop those 2 covers off first, and then we'll remove our control arm. So just get your clip remover tool behind the clips and just pop them out. Now grab a 19mm wrench on the bolt side of your upper control arm bolt and a 19mm ratcheting wrench on the nut side. Break this free. Thread your nut the rest of the way off and remove your washer. Now on the bolt side, we're gonna have to push this back behind our metal here. So we're gonna push the bolt through, we're gonna leave the washer here. Just work that all the way up and out. And remove your control arm and remove your bolt.
Alrighty guys, so now we've got the front all buttoned up, we're gonna move on to the rear. And the first thing we're gonna do is we have it under pole jacks here, just to support the weight of the differential, because we're gonna be removing some stuff. So the first thing we're gonna do is remove the factory shock. So now we did go ahead and spray that top mounting stud with penetrating lubricant just to help loosen it up. So now we're gonna use our 17 mil wrench to go ahead and run our nut off. So now once you get that nut almost off, you want to leave it a couple threads on. We'll go ahead and remove the lower mounting point, that way we can drop the shock down and grab onto the nut in the upper washer without it falling into the chassis anywhere. Now we'll go ahead and remove our bottom mounting bolt using our 17 mil socket on our impact. Now if you do find it's a little stiff getting off of this dowel, you can go ahead and grab a small soft mallet and just give it a few taps to come off. Now we'll go ahead and get our top mounting nut the rest of the way off. This is kind of a tight spot, so you may need to still use your wrench all the way. And you want to support your shock with your other hand while you're doing this. Once it's good and loose, go ahead and pull our shock out. Again, you want to make sure you don't drop your top nut, bushing, or washer. We'll go ahead and remove our shock. Now our next step is going to be to disconnect our sway bar from our end links here. Now you can go from the top here from the bushings. I personally like to take it off from the bottom of the end link here to the sway bar. It just makes things a little bit easier and simpler. So we're going to grab a 17 mil ratcheting wrench, remove the nut from this side, and pry this out of the sway bar. So we got our nut removed. Go ahead and grab a pry bar. We're going to go on the outside of this to our end link here. We'll just give it a little bit of persuasion, then move that stud to the outside of the sway bar mount. So now we're going to remove our track bar bolt on our differential side, and then we're going to loosen the bolt up but not fully remove it on the body side. So we'll grab our 19 mil socket on our impact to do that. Get that loosened up. That's going to give us enough travel. You may not even have to loosen the other side. If this does move, you should be good. Next, we'll go ahead and use our pole jacks to lower our differential down to get our springs out. Make sure this stays loose and doesn't get caught. You can actually bring this up just a bit like that. Right. Now that we have this lowered down, we can go ahead and move our springs. Just have to get it up over the lower perch. You want to watch your brake lines here. Go ahead and pop those out. Once you have this one out, you can go ahead and remove the other one as well.
Now we need to remove this little splash guard as well as our skid plate. So we're going to start with the splash guard. We've got 3 10 mil bolts in the front. We've got one here, one that's supposed to be here, and a clip in the middle. So I'm gonna start off in the middle with a clip remover tool. Pop that push clip out, and then grab your 10mm socket and remove all your bolts. Next, we're gonna remove our skid plate. We've got 2 bolts here, 2 bolts here. Grab a 12mm socket and remove them all. Then just get a hand on there before you remove the last one. And then you can lift this up, slide it off your hooks and remove it. Next, we're gonna have to remove our skid plate braces here. We have a couple spacers that are gonna be going on here. So grab a 14mm socket. You got a bolt back here, one in the middle and one up front. And it's gonna be the same exact thing on the other side. Now, once you have that removed, we're gonna start on the back here. We're gonna put our factory bolt back through, add 2 spacers there. We're just gonna catch a thread. Now on the front, we're gonna get another 2 spacers, put our bolt through, thread it into that hole. And then we have this flange bolt that we're gonna be using for the middle one. We're not putting any spacers on the middle. And then we can go ahead and tighten that down and do the same thing on the other side. Next, we're gonna install our sway bar relocation bracket. So we're gonna have to remove these 2 14mm bolts. Grab a 14mm socket and pull these out. So now we have our bracket. We have 2 bigger holes and then 2 smaller threaded holes. The threaded holes are going towards the front of the car. So now grab the Allen bolts included in the kit for the bigger holes. Slide that in place. Start threading that bolt in. Next, grab an 8mm Allen socket. Tighten those down. Then grab your bracket, slide that back onto your sway bar bushing. And then we have our hex head bolts with a flat washer that are going to be threading into the smaller threaded holes in our block. And then grab your 14mm socket and tighten those down. And then do that same thing on the other side. Next, we need to press our bushings into our upper control arms. Now I've got some grease here. I'm just gonna grease the inside where these are gonna slide into place first. And then we're gonna slide our bushings in. I'm gonna get one side on the table and use a rubber mallet on the other side to tap them into place. So we'll get some grease and just put a thin layer on the inside of our control arm. And then I'm gonna put our sleeve in first, and then the 2 halves of my bushing. And I'm just gonna put one end on the table, take my rubber mallet on the other side, just give it a couple taps to seat it all the way in. And then just do that same exact thing on the other side. And repeat the same for your other upper control arm. Now, last thing we need to do is install our grease fittings at the bottom of our bushings. Just get those threads started by hand. And then take a 10mm wrench and just snug them up. Do the same thing for your other one. Now we're gonna throw in that new upper control arm. So grab your long upper control arm bolt. We remove that washer, and then we have a small washer and a large washer that are going onto our bolt. So now with that small and large washer on our upper control arm bolt, we can slide that up into place. Get your upper control arm underneath of that ABS wire. Slide the bolt into your upper control arm. And then you're gonna need another washer on the other side of that bushing. And then press that bolt through. And now same thing over here, you're gonna have to slide a washer in between the bushing I'm gonna try to use a pry bar to help me out with this. Give me a little more room to get my washer in. And then just make sure that's centered on your bushing, and then you can keep pushing your bolt through. Once you get to the other side, you're gonna put your last washer on there and then thread on your factory nut. And then we're gonna fully tighten this down once it's under a load, so I'm just gonna leave that hand tight for now. Next, we can install our strut. Now on the bottom here, we have a longer and a shorter bushing. The longer is going towards the front. So now I'm gonna go up from the bottom and lift my sway bar and give me some clearance here. And then we have bolts with lock washer and flat washer that are going through the top of our strut mount and into the threaded holes in our top hat. And be careful with the one in the back so you don't drop it. And we're just gonna get these hand tight for now, and we'll come back to those later. Now we can install our lower strut bolt. I'm gonna cut these zip ties off now that we have pressure on both sides of our bushing. Slide those out. And just line this up and get your bolt through. And then get your washer and your nut on the other side of that bolt. Then grab a 19mm wrench and socket and tighten that down. Now we'll go back up top with a 14mm ratcheting wrench and fully tighten down our upper strut bolts. Now fold your knuckle in, raise up your upper control arm, get your ball joint down into that hole, thread your new nut on, and then grab a 21mm ratcheting wrench and a 10mm socket to hold the stud. Tighten that down. Next, we can remove the nut as well as one of our washers from our upper control arm stud, and then put our ABS bracket on there. Throw that washer and nut back on. And then straighten it out and take a 10mm socket to tighten it down. Next, we're gonna reinstall our brake line bracket into the knuckle. And get your sway bar end link also into your knuckle. Now grab a 12mm socket for your brake line bracket bolt and a 17mm socket for your end link. Next, we'll reinstall our tie rod end. Now I had to put a pull jack under the lower control arm to put a load on the suspension to be able to get my tie rod underneath of the knuckle here. Then I'm gonna slide it in. Now the load on the suspension is going to help us here once we get this tightened down, so we can go up and tighten down our upper control arm bushings under load. Now grab a 19mm socket to tighten down your castle nut. Once we have it tight, we're going to look to make sure that the hole in the stud lines up with the slots in the cotter pin. If it doesn't line up, you want to tighten it a little more until it does line up. Now with our castle nut tightened down, I'm going to slide in our cotter pin. And then just bend that around the stud and the nut. Now we're gonna go back up and tighten down our upper control arm bolt. I've got a pull jack under the lower control arm, putting a load on the suspension so we can tighten those bushings. Now I've got it lifting to that we're just about coming off of the lift pad. So now grab a 19mm wrench and ratcheting wrench and tighten that down. Once that's tightened down, you can reinstall your covers. Just put those push clips in the holes. And now you can repeat that process on the other side. Next, we can reinstall our skid plate. Now go back with a 12mm socket and tighten all of those down. And then next we'll reinstall that front cover. I'm gonna start the push clip down here. And I'll thread in all my bolts. Now we also have bolts here and here, but both of ours have broken off inside there. So take a 10mm socket, tighten down all of those. Now we can install our new rear spring. I'm going to take our upper isolator from our factory spring, drop it on, and then we can get this up into place. And now I'm just gonna pull down on my axle, try to slip that over the lower mount. Next we can install our shock. So I'm gonna get this lined up with the upper mount and then press it onto the lower mount. And then I'll start threading in my bolt. And now I'm just gonna get that lined up with the top and start raising my pole jack to raise up the axle and get that into our upper mount. Now up top, we're gonna install our bushing and then our washer. I'm gonna try to raise this up a little more to get some more stud poking out. And then we can go in and thread on our nut. Now we're going to take a 19mm wrench, tighten that down. Don't have a lot of room to work with, so we're going to be here a while. Now come back down to your lower shock mount, take a 17mm ratcheting wrench, tighten that down. Now we can reinstall our sway bar end link. We might need to raise our axle a little bit more, line that up. And I'll get my nut on the other side. And I'll grab that 17mm ratcheting wrench and tighten that down. And now repeat that whole process on the other side. So now last thing we need to do is reinstall our track bar bolt. Now our hole doesn't line up perfectly, so we're gonna have to shift our whole axle to the right. So the best way I found to do this is getting a ratchet strap, get one side up on the frame, one side on the axle, and we're just gonna tighten this to pull the axle over towards the frame until this hole lines up. Now we're lined up. I'm gonna get that threading into place. And I'll tighten that down with a 19mm socket. And then we can let out our ratchet strap. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the Icon Vehicle Dynamics 0 to 3.5 inch suspension lift system with tubular upper control arms, stage 2 for your 2010 to 24 4Runner. Thank you for watching, and for all things 4Runner, keep it right here at extremeterrain.com.